The summer break is upon us, so no F1 for a couple weeks, but we got a
Boo.
lot to talk about. And I think this is a good time as any to do some mid-season driver rankings. Who did
Yep.
you have for P20 for mid-season rating?
P20, I put Logan Sargent. Reasoning behind that, he's a rookie, so it is definitely hard to tell. You got to give him some leeway, but he's also there. And I feel like other drivers had much better rookie seasons than he has had. Again, very different circumstances for each racer, but I kind of expected more out of him. So,
Yeah, it's also just it's hard to tell when they're in that kind of car. Like that's not
yep.
a good car at all. Um, yeah, it's definitely I can imagine coming into F1 and driving that is probably not doing him any favors.
No, definitely not. But I mean, you have to take in consideration how Alex has been doing this season as well, um,
Yep.
and compare, those results. So, yeah, the car isn't great, but it can definitely perform better. And we've seen that. And I think he's just, again, he's a rookie. You got to give him some of that leeway, but I'm not impressed by him so far. Maybe he'll switch it up.
Yeah, that's maybe this summer break will give him a chance to recharge and figure some stuff out.
Yeah, and two races in the States when we come back. So maybe it'll be like not really much of a home court advantage, but it kind of.
Maybe, yeah. Logan Sargent to win at Vegas and Coda? Question
Yep,
mark.
yep. That I'll take everything I've ever said back if that happens. He'll move to P1 in this ranking.
Definitely.
So who did you have for P20? Or yeah, I guess P20, however we want to
Yeah,
go for it.
P20. Well, yeah, that works. This was a tough one for me. I was debating between this person and Logan, but I ended up going with K Mag. Um,
mm,
it's really surprising to me how he's been performing this season, especially compared to like last season. He was saving Haas and he was getting them all the points when Mick wasn't doing well. Um, but he's sitting at 2 points, and Nico Hulkenberg has nine. Obviously, the
yeah.
Haas isn't great; they kill their tires in races. But Nico's gone to Q3 a couple times. I think he placed. Didn't he get third in one of the sprint qualifyings or something? But
I think
he's had a couple like really good qualifyings, and they're really bad in the race. But K Mag has just been way off in quality
mm-hmm.
pace and race pace, and
Yep.
yeah, I don't know what's going on. I really expected K Mag to give to be the leader almost of that team, but it's Nico's really stepped in and done a good job. So I think that's kind of just like if Mick was still in the car, then I think this would be slightly different because we'd be like, oh, the Haas is a
Yep.
terrible car and it can't do anything. But
Right.
it's the fact that Nico's been able to do that stuff and K Mag hasn't. It's just not been a good look, especially because he's experienced. He's been with the team,
Yep.
and you would expect a better performance from him. But
I agree.
yeah,
I
so
agree. So I had him P19. I had the same debate between him and Logan. So I think we just reversed it. I think he is just there. He's forgotten about, and that's kind of sad to say, but he's just very easily forgettable
yeah,
during the
yeah,
race.
it's I think combination of the Haas being bad and then he's just not on it this year for whatever
No,
reason. So like you
no.
were saying, we switched it up a little bit. My P19 was Logan. I think the only reason he's higher is just because he's a rookie, and I'm giving him a little bit of leniency, and because he's American, so just a
Right.
little bit of favoritism, just a little bit.
Okay.
So I bumped him up to P19. But yeah, pretty much the same stuff you said that I was expecting a little bit more from him, and we've seen that Alex has done well and had some really good results. Just Logan, I don't think has. I think Logan is the only driver on the grid that has not out qualified their teammate at least once.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, he's just been getting pretty much his ass handed to him by Alex in qualifying.
I'm hoping he makes it back for next season. I feel like he needs more of a chance, and obviously, depending how the second half of the season goes. But I would like to see him maybe in a different car. Who knows? Even if it's the same car, I think just 1 year under his belt will give him a little bit more experience, and I think it would be easier to judge him after that as well.
Yeah, I think with a rookie, you need to at least give them 2 years. It's a big jump for them coming from F2 to F1, and Logan showed a lot of potential in F2. So I think he has the skill. I think maybe if Williams can get a better car for the next, for the rest of the season, or maybe next season, we'll be able to see some
Yeah.
better performances. But yeah, it's he's definitely one that is at risk of being on the chopping block if he doesn't, perform a little bit better the second half of the season.
We need an American on the grid, so
We do.
I have faith
It's
in him.
it's been a long time.
Yeah.
Just if only the Williams was a good car or a better car.
Next year.
Yeah.
Next year.
So
All
who'd you
right.
have for P18?
P18, I put Joe. Again, he's also just there. Not really standing out for me this season, and he's just not doing as well as Bottas. So, I mean, neither one of them are really doing that great.
Yeah, the
So,
Alpha is a stinker this year.
yeah, they're not great, and obviously, again, just forgotten about, and that's so sad. But yeah, I can't really say much more than that. How about you? What'd you put for P18?
So my P18 for now, it's kind of hard to judge him off 2 races, but I put Daniel Ricciardo. The first race
Oh,
back, I think it was, he did really well. He finished better than Yuki. Spa was not as great of a weekend. He almost had a
yeah,
really good qualifying corner cut and got his track or his lap delayed because of track limits. And then he finished top 10 in the sprint, but no points for that. So it's
yeah,
kind of up and down. I think he's still, getting a handle of the car. Um, and he's had flashes where he's looked close to Yuki or better than Yuki, but it's just kind of been inconsistent these past 2 races. But it's hard to judge him off of 2 races.
yeah.
So I think it's only fair to put him down towards the bottom just because he hasn't really done anything. So
Okay.
yeah, P18 for Danny Rick. Who do you have for P17?
This shouldn't come as a shocker. I put Bottas as 17. Again, he's not really doing anything wrong. He's out racing Joe, but by 1 point, it's neck
Yeah.
and neck. It was kind of by default he had to go one place higher. Um, Again, just a stinky little car, so hard to judge. But unfortunately, that's just the cards they were dealt. How about you?
So I think again we switched up our orders a little bit. I have in P17 Joe, and like you were saying, he hasn't really stood out. I mean, besides the qualifying Hungary and then the mechanical issue, like completely fucked his race. I would have loved to have
Yeah,
seen how both him and Bottas would have done in that race because
yeah,
Bottas I think was seventh and then Joe was fifth. Um, but besides from that, they've kind of just been forgotten about. Haven't really done too much. Only 1 point difference. I think Joe has definitely stepped up in his performance. That he's closer to
yep,
Bottas, and I think Bottas is doing a little bit worse than he was, but it's hard to tell because I think their car is just really not good this year. Like last year, they kind of were on it from the go, and they had a good car for the first half of the
yep,
season, but then they just didn't develop, and it seems like since the start of this year, they just haven't had a good car to start with. So
yeah.
they've really been nowhere.
Agreed. So who'd you put for P16?
So neck and neck. I put Bottas. Literally
Oh
one
wow.
point difference. I think, like I was saying, Bottas is doing a little bit worse than I kind of would expect from him, but he's still outscoring Joe by 1 point. I just,
Yeah.
yeah, he hasn't done anything that stood out or been, an outstanding performance. So yeah, just one spot above Joe and P16. Who
Stellar
did
ratings.
you? Yeah. I mean, I think it's only fair. Who did you
It
have
is.
for
It is.
P16?
We switched it up. I put Daniel there.
Okay.
So I took a little different approach where, right, it's not fair. It's only been two races, but I think out of the two races, just how he's performed in comparison to even Nick before his departure, I think we were all pretty impressed. Granted that he hasn't had, the beginning of the season or the season to really prepare and adjust and whatnot. So again, it was varying the performances on a scale. It wasn't very consistent, but
Yeah.
maybe it's some bias included as well. I just put him P16.
Some Danny Rick love.
Yeah, I couldn't do him any worse than that.
Yeah, it's funny. Someone was asking about like if he's excited for the summer break. He's like, I know everyone else is going to be on vacation, but I'm just going to be in the gym the whole time because I've been out for 6 months. He's already had
he's
his
catching
extended break.
up. Yeah, he doesn't get a break. I mean, he does, but he's definitely working hard.
Yeah. So for P15, who did you have?
None other than Lance Stroll. And my notes here is what the fuck is going on with him? Question mark, question mark, question mark. Alonso is so far ahead of him. It's like, how is this even possible? He's had some decent moments, but I just think a lot of sloppy performances overall. I don't want to say that he's getting lazy because I don't think that's the right way to put it, but in the car that he's in, he should be performing so much better. I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know what the rationale, the mentality, but it's definitely disappointing to be that outperformed by your teammate in such a good car. So
Yeah,
put him
it's
there.
not been a great season for Lance.
No, not at all. Who'd you put?
Well, speaking of, I also had Lance in P15. Pretty
Perfect.
much the same reason. I mean, if you look at where Alonso is, he's third in the standings, and then Lance is ninth, and there's a difference of, just about 100 points. Um, that's
Right.
pretty substantial. And,
Yeah.
like in the beginning of the season, he obviously, I guess he broke his wrist right before preseason, so like, you can
True.
give him a little bit, but I think at this
The wrist
point
has healed.
it's healed, and he just hasn't been close to Alonso. I think Alonso's really just kind of shown how good Alonso is, but then also kind of
Yeah.
exposed Lance.
Yeah.
Lance had some good performances, in the past years and stuff, but I think this is probably. I mean, Seb was kind of his twilight era of F1 and probably wasn't at his best. But Alonso's like
Yeah.
at his best still this old, and he's just really outperforming Lance. And I think that if Lance wasn't the son of the owner of the team, there'd be a lot of questions about whether he deserves to be
Yeah.
in F1 in
Yeah.
that team specifically. Because imagine their car was better than it was. Like, just say it was fighting Red Bull, and they were losing the constructors championship because of Lance. Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
kind of they're probably gonna lose second in the constructors. Well, they're not in second anymore, but they
Yep.
should have been if Lance was performing as well as Alonso. So yeah, just not a good season for him. So P15 for
No.
me.
Agreed. Glad we can align on that one. Who'd
Yeah.
you put for P14?
So kind of along the similar thought process to Lance, I have Checo at P14. Obviously, he's had some good results, but there was that stretch of 6 times where he didn't make it into Q3, and arguably one of the most dominant F1 cars in history. And there's been races where, like in Spa, he started ahead of Max, and then Max ended up winning by like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, that's just it's kind of mind-boggling how like there's that much of a difference between them in the same car. It's almost like they're driving 2 different cars, but
Yeah.
just I think also Checo's mindset. Maybe he came into it this season really thinking he had a chance to fight for the world championship.
Yeah.
Um, and especially in the beginning of the season when, I think he won one or two races and was, kind of close to Max, and people were like asking him questions about it, and maybe he was getting in his own
Yep.
head and stuff, and that was affecting his performances. But yeah, I don't think it's been a good season for Checo, and thankfully no one else is close to them in car performance, so Max can win the constructors by himself if he wanted to. But similar
Right.
to what Aston's going to have to, or what they should be thinking about is like, is this guy who we need as a second driver if we are in a fight for, a tight constructors position? So
Yeah.
yeah, P14 for Checo.
Yeah, I put him right there with you. Just
Uh,
he could be consistently finishing, I guess in this case, second, if he wasn't completely always fucking up in qualifying. I feel like he's making it so much harder for himself, having to just work extra hard to finish, even on the podium. But like you said, like how is he so far behind Max in the same car? And it
yeah,
makes you
it's
like, yeah, like is Max just really pushing the car to its limits? Or, I mean, he is definitely, but
yep.
I don't know. That's a tough position to be in too. I wouldn't want to be Max Verstappen's teammate. That's for sure. I think he could make
No,
some of the best drivers look bad at this
Max is
point.
definitely a teammate killer.
Yeah, that would be an ego hit bruise real bad. And I don't blame him, but yeah, he should be doing a lot better than he really is. So I even think P14 is kind of generous for Lance and Checo.
Who did you have in P13?
All right, so these next like 4, 5 rankings, I feel like could be flipped and flopped in many different
Yeah,
ways, and I went
this
back and
section
forth.
of the rankings were so difficult to separate.
Yes. Uh-huh. So I actually put Pierre. Um, he's pretty much about even with his teammate. Um, he's a constant presence in like points. He got that spa podium in the sprint race. Um, but I mean, I just think the Alpines, just in general, are struggling this season. So again, it's just a matter of is it the car, is it the driver? I think there's just a lot of high expectations for Pierre this season. At least maybe I had those. I'm not sure if that's just a universal experience, but
No,
I think we all kind of
I think
expected him.
everyone, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a disappointment for sure. So this was tough. I feel like he is kind of low in this ranking, but just expectations were a little bit shattered. So I had to put him there.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, yet again, we have the same ranking. I also had
Perfect.
Pierre in P13. Um,
Perfect.
and yeah, it's just, before this season, I really rated Pierre. I thought he was like one of the top drivers, or could it be one of the top drivers? But I don't know if it's, the new team, the car just isn't clicking with him. Obviously, they've had some bad luck and some DNFs and,
Yeah.
you know, things that they can't control. But I mean, Esteban had the podium in Monaco, and
Yeah.
Pierre had the top three in the sprint race. It's not technically a podium, but um,
They call it that.
yeah, I mean, they're for where their car is, they're like kind of close in points. I think it's like a 10-point difference, um, which is they're kind of in no man's land now in car
Yeah.
performance, so it doesn't really matter because McLaren's now a step ahead of them and
Yeah.
outscored them by like 80 points in the last 3 weekends, and then they got a huge gap to the group behind them. So it's not costing them anything, but I think in terms of like head to head, race and qualifying, they're probably pretty close on who's done better than who,
Yeah.
over the course of the season. But I think Esteban's just capitalized a little bit more on it. So
Yeah.
yeah, P13 for Pierre for me. Definitely was
All
expecting a little
right.
bit more.
Yeah. A little disappointing, but circumstances. Who'd you put for P12?
So this was kind of a shock for me this season
Mm,
how well he's done, but Nico Hulkenberg has done so well. He's been out of the sport for I think 2 or 3 years. Came back into the Haas, was expected to have a fight on his hands with K Mag, but he's just
Mm-hmm.
pretty much wiped the floor with him. He's at so
Yeah.
much better qualifying pace, and then because of that, he's kind of been able to hold on to some fringe points here and there. So he has 9 points. K Mag only has two, so it's only a 7 point difference. But for where their car is,
Yeah.
that's massive.
That's
Um,
mega. Yeah.
yeah, and I've just been really impressed with him. I think Nico's always been, just a really good, solid driver. I don't think he's like, one of those top talents or anything, but he's always been above average, and I think that this is definitely showing that he deserved to be in the sport still, and has the skill and the talent still to put in good performances. Um, yeah, overall,
Absolutely.
been really really surprised with Nico. I was
Yeah.
I before the season, I kind of had him on like a similar tier to K Mag, but he's
Yeah.
yeah, just blowing him out of the water, like I was saying.
Agreed.
So, who did you have for P12?
I actually had Esteban Ocon.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is where things get tricky. Again, he's not super consistent. I think he's a little bit more all over the place than Pierre might be. But of course, that podium in Monaco was great for him. And I think he's, as you said, just outperforming the car a little bit better than Pierre. But I kind of put them in the same breath because I feel like they're pretty consistent together and just in the middle. Like, I think that's just like the perfect place to put them, just kind of in the middle
Yeah.
together, siloed off because they're in a really interesting situation now. And I feel like it's like they're twins, they just want to DNF together or they want to do well together. So I
Friends
had to
that
put them together.
DNF together, besties.
Stay together. Yeah. Yeah. The two Frenchmen, they're French. They probably French kiss, all the good stuff. Yeah. That's P12. So
All
who'd you
right.
put for P11?
So P11 for me was Esteban. So I had them
Oh,
separated by more than one position. They were just
oh no.
11 and 13. But yeah, I think Esteban has done a little bit better than like Nico, who I had in P12. But like we were saying, when we kind of got into this group, it's so tight, and it was like almost
Mm-hmm.
impossible to pick who to put where.
Yeah.
Um, Esteban, yeah, he's in the podium in Monaco. He's had some solid qualifying results, and I think he's just slightly outperformed Pierre, but like just barely. It's so tight between
Yeah.
them, and like it's just been matter of like he qualifies better one weekend, and then something happens to other cars, he gets slightly better points. But I think when you
Yeah.
look at their performance, aside from the points, they are pretty similar. But Esteban is just slightly, doing a
Yeah.
little bit more in that car.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he is P11 for me.
Perfect. P11 for me was Nico. So again, we're really just switching it up. And I think
Yeah.
our two brains together were what our brains were doing, trying to decide where to put everyone.
Yep.
So very similar to what you said. I think going into the season, I mean, like you said, he's never been one of the like super big names, at least to me, that stood out. He was just always there. He was good, he's consistent, but I feel like he laid kind of low. And that's obviously, I think, just since I've watched him, the cars that he's been in haven't been the best either. But I think
He did have a
consistently,
win.
he did. Yeah, yes,
But
a
yeah,
shocker to some.
I completely agree.
He's just been there. He hasn't been someone that like my attention has always been on. But I think this season I was like, whoa, like what is he doing in Q3 all the time? Like this is a shock. So he's really fast in qualifying, but once race time comes around, he kind of vanishes. It's like nowhere to be found. Um, but I think just comparing him, of course, to his teammates, just he's really pushing that car and he's really trying to do something with it as best as he can. So I put him at P11 because I thought that, you can see the hustle. He's hustling. He's trying.
Yeah. I think that also him being there for a while helps get that edge over
Yes.
Pierre. Like I was saying
Yeah.
for my Pierre rating, I think being in a new team. I mean, Pierre's been Red Bull family for so long, and getting out of that and going to a different team must be a big adjustment for him.
True. Yeah.
So, who did you have for P10? Get into the top 10.
Top 10. I put Yuki. Again, he has 3 points, so he's not really, that high up. But
Yeah,
you
not
have to
setting the
question.
charts alight.
No. But is he in a shit car? Like we saw Nick struggling too. Daniel didn't, just hop in the car and magically finish on the podium either. And it's also hard to compare him to Nick again. Like, were they both shitting the bed? Was it the car? I think Yuki's had a lot of pressure on him this season to step up. And I would say it's happened, maybe not as much as I expected him to. He's got, 3 P11s and 3 P10s, so he's pretty consistent in terms of either, like, falling in the points or falling right outside of the points. He's an aggressive driver, and I respect that out of him. I think he's really funny to listen to when he has his little tantrums. But I think he has stepped up this season. The car, I think, maybe just might not be stepping up with him as much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So
how about you?
No shocker here. I also had Yuki for P10.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's been good to see him kind of mature a little bit this year. I think that's a big thing that people were talking about going into this season. He's gonna cool down a little bit. He's known for being a little bit of a hothead on the radio, which is very entertaining, but it's not always the greatest look. And arguably they're in the slowest car. So the fact that he's gotten points a couple times and been right on the fringe of points a handful of times, it's really impressive how he's done. I would love to see them be in a more competitive car, but the AlphaTauri just isn't there this year. But I think what he's doing is kind of like what Alex was doing last year, where the Williams was the slowest car and is, getting these fringe points every once in a while. That's kind of what I see Yuki doing this season, and it's definitely been impressive to see him, beat cars that are much faster than him. So I think well deserving of P10 for me.
Yeah, go Yuki. So who'd you have for P9?
So this is another area, these like next 4 or 5 drivers that was, like I said, this whole ranking besides like number 1 and 2.
So hard.
So hard. I had George Russell for P9. He's kind of had a tale of 2 seasons in the first half of the season. Before the side pod upgrade in Monaco, he was he was definitely getting beaten by Lewis still, but it was close. Last season he beat him in the driver standings, and people were like, "Oh wow, George beat Lewis." But there was a bunch of mitigating circumstances and whatever. But since they got that new side pod upgrade, George has been nowhere. Just something with how the car changed its handling or something just hasn't clicked with him, and it's clicked with Lewis, and the gap between them has just grown. It's a pretty substantial jump in points. It's like a 50-point difference between George and Lewis, and that's pretty much all happened since that car upgrade. So I think he's had flashes. He's still a really good driver, and he has a lot of potential, and he's shown that sometimes throughout the season. But he's just kind of been disappointing the last the second half of the first half of the season. So B9.
What a statement
for me.
Who'd you have? I also put him. I also had George. Literally echoing exactly what you said. Last season it was like, oh, George is better than Hamilton. Like, he has more points. And it was just this whole crazy situation. So I think, again, going into the season, everyone had really high expectations for him and maybe thought that it would be more competitive between him and Lewis. But exactly like you said, since these updates, he just has struggled and hasn't been able to adapt. And it's been showing. So hopefully, after the break, he's maybe gotten a handle on it and come to figure out how the car works a little bit
Yeah.
better. But I think it's another scenario, just not as bad as like Checo and Lance, just where your teammate's just doing arguably a very, considerably better than you are. But I think
Yeah.
his is on like a slightly smaller scale. And he did well in the beginning as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's only 50 points compared to 100 between
yeah.
Alonso and Lance. So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
but same boat.
Yep. P8, who'd you put?
So for P8, I had Alex Albon. I think
Mm.
that the Williams has definitely taken a step up this year. They've had a couple of big upgrades, and at Silverstone they were genuinely looking like one of the top three fastest cars. And then the weather conditions didn't play into their favor and stuff. But he's had some really solid performances. He's been a great train conductor a couple times this season, and just held slower cars behind him for a long time and managed to get points
Yeah.
like that. Kind of the classic Alex drive these last 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
where he just
Yeah.
goes on some different strategy, gets ahead of faster cars, and just holds them behind. But yeah, he's doing pretty well. He's definitely, I mean, like I was mentioning with Logan, he's the only driver pairing where they've outqualified their teammate every single race.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
he's definitely showed that he's substantially faster than Logan, and points show it. He's at 11 and Logan's at 0. So yeah,
Yep.
all in all, just very solid season from Alex, and had a bunch of really impressive qualifyings, getting into Q3s when he shouldn't have, and race results.
Yeah. It's a fair point.
So who did you have for P8?
This one hurts me. I had Carlos. I wish he was
Okay.
higher. It hurts me.
Yeah.
I think that Carlos, out of the two Ferraris, has been the most consistent. And the battle between him and Charles is very close. But he hasn't been on the podium yet. I think he takes more of the safe, conservative route to driving, where I think Charles is a little bit more aggressive and takes more risks. I think Charles probably lives by like high risk, high reward, and Carlos definitely doesn't. So I think I put him lower because I think he can push the car a little bit more than he has. And whether that's a mix of Ferrari strategy based on like what he's been told to, I don't know what. I just think that he could do better. Not that he's doing bad. I just think he can push himself a little bit more. I mean, he's only been outside of the points twice, and one of them was, the damage in Belgium. So he's doing great. And it hurts that he's P8. He should be higher. I just think in comparison, he could do a little bit more. He has the skill and the talent. I think it's just a matter of like taking that risk for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So P7 for me, I had Carlos.
Perfect.
And yeah, so I think that I wanted to put him a little bit higher as well. He's definitely been, I think, pretty close to Charles in pace. Like last season, he had that period where he like really was struggling to get a handle on the car.
Yeah.
But he kind of started off pretty well, and him and Charles have been pretty close. He's definitely had weekends where he's been faster than Charles, but then hasn't capitalized on it. I think that's kind of been his downfall this season, that there's been times where he's had pace and he just, hasn't been able to use it. Whether it's like bad qualifying, bad strategy call, or, driver mistakes, something like that. It's been a solid season, but I think there's definitely more that he's leaving on the table that, he could potentially get. And that between him and Charles, it's 7 points. So, in terms of points, they're very close. But I think Charles basically had like no points after the first 3 rounds or something like that.
Yeah.
So
it's like
Carlos did have a head start.
Yeah, like Carlos is definitely more consistent, and that's why he's only 7 points behind. But like I said, Charles is like 0 points to like, okay, podium to, it's a little bit more of those highs and lows, but like the wins are greater with Charles than they are with Carlos. But hey, both have their perks, pros and cons to both. So
they do. They're both great drivers, but I think Charles has just done bit more than Carlos, and
Yeah.
P7 for him, or at least in my
Yeah,
eyes.
so
Yeah,
for
go ahead.
P7, I put Alex. No surprise.
Look at that.
Echoing, yeah, literally echoing what you said. Very good qualities, good race results. Got podium. Crazy, right? He's doing great. Three
Yeah.
times of the points, two times P11. Of course, it's hard to compare him to Logan. It is his rookie year. You know, again, take it with a grain of salt. He is definitely, though, stepping up and showing why he can take the car to different levels than his teammate. I think the one that stands out to me is in Canada when he was defending to a P7 finish, which I thought was remarkable coming out of a Williams.
Yep.
So I think, everyone loves Alex. Everyone has a little soft spot for Alex. He's just a really great guy, and hopefully he's in a better car soon.
Yeah, I mean, Williams definitely made some good progress, so hopefully they can keep
Yeah.
doing that. And
Yeah.
they've recruited a bunch of new personnel to their team, so it looks like people want to join them and make them a better team. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of years.
We shall see. Get a better car.
Yeah, yeah. So who did you have for P6?
Again, this one really pains me more than Carlos. I had to put Charles here. I had to. Um, his performance has been a little bit questionable. Like I said, the highs are highs, the highs are high, the lows are lows. He's fast. He definitely pushes the car to the limit, but I think he also is prone to pushing the car past its limit. He's known for spinning off in high speeds, so
Yeah, that's
he's definitely a risk taker. But like I said, high risk, high reward. And again, it's hard to compare. Well, it's hard. You have to take into consideration Ferrari's strategy, because that
or
plays a
lack
big part.
thereof.
Yeah, true, lack thereof. Uh, their horrible strategy, because that definitely plays a key part in their performance this season. I think a big thing that Charles probably has to work on is being a little bit more stern with his team. And I think Carlos does a good job of that in terms of when the strategy is bad. I think Carlos is more likely to be like, no, and put his foot down and kind of argue it, where I think Charles is more likely to just agree to agree.
Yeah,
And then it ends up screwing him over.
yeah. Carlos almost isn't scared of Ferrari. Like,
Yep.
like
Yeah.
that's what got him his win last year in Silverstone. That he kind of
Yeah.
refused team
Yep.
orders and was like, telling them, I'm gonna do what I need to do to win this race. Whereas
Yeah.
Charles, you don't really hear making those same calls. Although
No.
there's been a little bit of that. I think he's starting to try to do that, and I think it's starting to help him a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah, I totally agree that Charles should be ahead of Carlos for this season.
Yeah. Yeah. He should be higher, but he's not. Who'd you have for P6?
So my P6, I put Oscar. I think that even when McLaren had a bad car in the beginning of the season, he was pretty close to Lando. Like usually only like tenth and a half, 2/10 off in quali. Oscar had a bunch of mechanical issues that kind of were out of control, but when they were both racing and both had no issues, they were pretty close, and definitely Oscar was showing why McLaren went and got him. And then since they've had this upgraded car, Oscar should have had his first podium. Unlucky safety car. Then he had his top 3 finish in the sprint in Belgium, and he's just done really well. And he's kind of like, if McLaren had started the year with this car with both teammates, doing well, they would probably be second in the constructors right now. And I think it's
aggressive.
Because Mercedes in second right now, and it's pretty much there's a big gap between Hamilton and George. Although who knows how big the gap would be if they have this car the whole season. But I think Oscar's done very well as a rookie, and he's just shown everyone basically that he was definitely worth all the effort to get him.
Yeah, literally put in P5. And so, exactly the same thing, the same notes, just I can see why McLaren fought so hard for him. I think in the beginning of the season, I was kind of like, weird. Like, you guys did all that, and this is happening. I mean, I knew the car was kind of shit, so it was hard to tell, but
Mhm.
we've really seen his talent come through with these new upgrades, and I am manifesting a podium for him the second half of the season. I think
I
it's
think it will happen.
likely.
I think it will happen.
Yes. And I have to say, with this better car and these new upgrades, his personality has come out even more as well. And I love how he's so aggressive but so calm at the same time. Cool, calm, and collected. I think he's the
Yeah,
most level-headed driver on the grid. Um,
he's
and I think
so
it just makes it
level-headed.
funny. Yeah, I'm like, what? Like, do you get angry? Like, do you yell?
I don't think
So
that's
yeah,
literally possible for him.
no, no. I think
Like
he's great. I'm
the
excited to see how the
the
rest of the
the
season
team
goes.
radio in Hungary when Perez kind of pushed
Yeah.
him off, and they asked him, "Did Perez push you off?" And he's like, "Yeah, he didn't leave me that much space." Like just so calm, like no anger or aggression at all, and just like
No.
so factual.
Yep.
Um,
He's great.
yeah, it's also I forgot to say it, but he had a year off where he wasn't racing last year with
Yeah.
Alpine, and the fact that he's come in after a year off as a rookie and done this is pretty impressive.
Go Oscar Pastry. Who'd you put for P5?
So for P5, I put Charles. So
Wow.
a little bit higher than you had him, just barely.
That's so mean of
but
me.
but yeah, it's been very up and down this season. He had a rough start to the season, but Pole and Baku, one of two drivers outside of Red Bull to get pole. Um, and yeah, I think he's just gotten a little bit more out of the car at times, and definitely shown how talented of a driver he is. But I think there with his lows, it's kind of showed some of his weaknesses. Like in some of the mixed condition races, he was just nowhere, and
Mhm.
Carlos was out qualifying him and racing much better than him. Um, he definitely said he knew that and he was trying to work on it. So he's getting better. He's still young and
Self
still has.
self-aware king.
Yeah, he's doing what he's got to do to be able to beat Max one day. Um,
Another
but yeah,
incident.
I think. Yeah, it's been too long since we've seen one. It was
I
last year
know.
was great when they were racing like at the beginning of the season
I
at least
know.
when they're having great battles. Um, but yeah, I
Yep.
think he's done pretty well. He's ahead of Carlos. He's had better highs. Just needs to work on some weaknesses in wet weather, like mixed conditions, and some strategy. But yeah, so P5 for Charles for me.
Okay. All right. P4.
So P4, I put Lando.
Mm.
Even in the bad car, he was getting points results, and he was probably in like the sixth or seventh or eighth fastest car at some point. And I think in Bahrain they were like the slowest, and Miami they were the slowest. Um, but yeah, I mean he's just doing Lando stuff as he usually does, and getting the absolute most out of the car.
Yeah.
Something that Oscar was saying is that Lando's obviously very good, and he always has the car on a knife edge. It's always like at the absolute like limit of the performance, and I think that's something that Lando
Hmm.
excels at. And regardless of if the car is bad, like it was in the beginning of the season, or if it's good, like it is now, and he gets two P2s in a row,
Hmm.
I think he's definitely showing everyone that he definitely has the potential to be world champion if he gets the car that can fight for the championship.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just Lando's being Lando. He's getting good performances, good quality, good race. And yeah, so P4 for me for Lando. Just really impressive overall.
Yeah.
So who'd you have
P4.
for P4?
Yeah. This might come as a shock. I feel like it is a little low considering who he is, but I actually put Hamilton. Um,
Okay.
he's doing great this season. He drives good. He puts up a good fight. He has good form. The car isn't, of course, all there. It's not competitive to the Red Bull. No car is. He's obviously the GOAT. I guess I feel like he should be more consistently higher up. I don't know. I mean, it's, again, the car isn't all there, but it can be there, right? Like, we've seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess maybe it's just a matter of me like expecting more out of someone so great and talented that I'm like, oh, come on. Like, I know you could do better, even though he's doing great. I just think in terms of this season, I've just been more impressed by, that sounds so crazy. I've been more impressed by other drivers. And like, George is struggling.
It's pretty wild.
That is crazy. He's still impressive. Of course he is. But I just think the improvement of other drivers was maybe just a little bit greater. But that's hard for Lewis because he's already like up here. So for him to even like move up a notch is like hard. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's maybe why I'm like putting him on this scale, because I feel like the other drivers just had more room to improve, whereas he was already here. He doesn't have that much room to improve. That's crazy.
That's
but that was my rationale.
Okay, so I had Lewis in P3, just ahead of Lando. I think that,
fair.
You know, it's kind of like the opposite of George, like before the side pod updates. It's not like he was doing bad, kind of like George is underperforming now, but they were much closer. Yeah. And now with the update, he's doing better. But I think he's been super consistent, you know, more or less the entire season. Obviously, Aston was faster than them in the beginning, but the car's been getting like slowly better with more upgrades, and he's been getting the most out of it pretty much every single race. He got pole in Hungary, which was insane, probably like lap of a lifetime. Well, he's had probably a lot of those kind of laps to be honest. But yeah, I think that he's still at the top of his game, and if he gets a car that's, you know, good enough to fight Max, he will gladly take that fight again and bring it to Max. But he's just been super consistent for me.
If Lewis was in Checo's seat, this season would be so different.
Imagine that we would be in for a great. I mean, obviously the fight, it would be between them every race pretty much. Yeah, but it would be a great season. One day, maybe. I think he might be 58 years old, but I think he's gonna still be going for that 8th world championship if he doesn't have it by then. I think he's very determined to stay in the sport until he can fight for another championship. We'll see what happens maybe next year if they can catch up. So who did you have for P3?
So I put Lando. Like I said, I think I just was more. The improvement scale was greater here. And of course, he was always a great driver, but putting him in a better car, you just see the talent come through. Good car, good results, 2 P2s in a row, as you mentioned. And like, he is truly championship material. Like, he's fast, he's good, he performs. And I think he's a force to be reckoned with. And I think a lot of people think he's overhyped. I've heard that's the word on the street, that they think that, but I think it's because they just have
a lot of Lando hate online.
Yeah, I know. And I think it's just maybe
for no reason.
Yeah, no reason. No part of him is overhyped. I think he deserves the hype that he has. I think people just haven't seen him really in a good car.
Yeah.
You know?
I think
so.
He's in a decent car now, and he's showing people exactly how good he is. And silencing the haters, as they say.
Yeah, so I can't wait to see what the second half brings for him.
Yeah, especially because I think that they're supposed to be bringing another big upgrade. So if they can take another step forward, that'd be pretty amazing. But
wow.
We shall see. 10 races to go.
Ooh. We'll be live for one of them.
Yeah. So who did you have for P2? I think that these next two were going to be have the same, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I put Max P2. I'm just kidding.
Imagine.
Of course, I put Alonso. started off the season so unexpectedly good, literally came out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
But before race 10, but this is the Alonso, like the legend that we all know. He's back, like he's been here, but he's like, hello, look at me again. Of course, the car fell off a little bit. So curious to see, if the second half of the season kind of yields different results. I think he should be winning more. I don't know. I mean, we started off the season thinking it was going to be like an Aston Red Bull fight to the finish. We were all like, what is going on? This isn't the season.
That it would be. Yeah.
Right. Well, we hoped wrong, but yeah, no, obviously super impressive. I think he just, again, came out of nowhere and was just like, hey bitches, like move out the way.
I'm back.
He's absolutely shitting on Stroll. So rightfully so, P2 for me.
Yeah, I also had Alonso in P2, and yeah, I've always, since he's been back on the grid, I've known that he's had flashes where he's shown, like he's still at the top of his game. He might be, old, but he's still just as aggressive and talented as he was when he won his world championships. And, I think he was the only driver that might have had a chance to take a win from Max this season so far in Monaco. Yeah. Obviously, they had a little bit of a strategy blunder that probably cost Alonso the win. But yeah, it was really the way he started the season was incredible. They were the only car that was really anywhere close to Max in the beginning. But even though that wasn't that close, but they were clear second best, and he had 6 podiums so far this season. I mean, I don't think did he have any podiums in the last couple of years before then? Maybe one.
Maybe like 1 or 2. Yeah,
it's so
he wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, Alonso was ahead of Perez in second place for the championship for a little bit. For actually
embarrassing.
A while, I guess it was, pretty embarrassing for Checo, and there's a reason he's down in the bottom half of the table or the rankings.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alonso's just had a great season and rightfully deserved P2.
Yeah.
And I think
that leaves P1. Wonder who it is.
Than Max Verstappen. Just
I don't think we even need to give no, we don't have to give an explanation for this one.
And just look at the results. It's incredible. He's just driving the car to the absolute limit and dominating Checo, every other driver. Doesn't matter where he starts a race, he's going to win. That's kind of where it's at now. I would love for a race just to have him start from the pit lane and just see what happens.
He'll finish P1.
I think he probably would still, I think he would still win, but it'd probably be entertaining.
Yeah. So entertaining. He would probably get there in 20 laps. Just like a car a lap.
Conservative. I think maybe like
conservative.
I think you get a little bit more than that. Yeah, maybe a lap.
6
10.
laps.
two cars a lap.
Oh my god, probably. I mean, he's a legend. He's making this season a little boring, but it's fine. It's fine. Probably, I know a lot of people don't like to hear this, but I really do think he's one of the best drivers in Formula One history, even though people are not ready for that conversation.
Yeah, the people that are saying he like still hasn't proven himself and he's like hasn't established himself as one of the best drivers in F1 like ever are just delirious. Like it's so clear how talented he is, and he's just absolutely showing it this year. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't even say it's just the car.
No.
You can't. They're playing Delulu.
Yeah. Like, just look at where Checo is and look at where Max is. It's clear it's not just the car. He's just that good.
Yeah. Well, that's why he has his own song. And
that's why he has his own song.
Cue
Super
the song.
Max.
No, I like the other one. It's like do 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 do. Max Verstappen. You know that one?
I haven't heard that one. I've only heard Super Max.
That one's better. No. No. 33, Max Verstappen.
I haven't heard it, but Supermax is better.
No. Well, okay. Maybe we should have everyone vote which Max Verstappen song is better. I will die on this hill. So it's 33 Max Verstappen.
People will agree with me, but we'll find out. We'll leave a poll.
It was, it's an old song. It was created when he wasn't number one.
So like 3 years old.
Yeah.
It was so old.
So old, crazy. But it was like before he really was like he was good. But not this good.
I mean, he's always been good, but before he was winning championships.
Right. Yeah. He had loyal fans. Yeah. Those are
our rankings. Yeah. Hopefully this will help you get through the summer break, and we are 3 weeks away, I think, from the next race.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And,
Wait,
I think
yeah.
We're gonna do a couple more bonus episodes in the next couple weeks before the summer break ends. So make sure to keep an eye out for those. But for now, I think that's gas.
That's gas.
Make sure to check us out on our socials.
Yep, we're on everything you can imagine. Feet Finder, OnlyFans.
Not yet.
Subscribe below.
See ya.
Peace.